The space station called Harmony's Edge floated quietly in the darkness between two distant stars. It was a massive structure built by 47 different alien species who worked together to study the universe. Ships came and went every day, bringing scientists from all corners of the galaxy. The station had laboratories, living quarters, cafeterias, and observation decks where researchers could watch the stars. Taemin stood in the docking bay, holding a single bag with all his belongings. He was young for a scientist, barely 30 years old, with dark hair and tired eyes from the long journey. He had traveled for 3 weeks to reach this station, spending most of that time in cryo-sleep. Now he was finally here, ready to start his new job as a xenobotanist. His specialty was studying plants, particularly the tough ones that could survive in extreme conditions. The station commander came to meet him personally. Her name was Vexithari, and she was unlike anything Taemin had ever seen. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, and her body seemed to be made of living crystal. Light moved through her form in waves, changing colors based on her mood. Right now she glowed a soft blue, which Taemin hoped meant she was calm. "Dr. Taemin, welcome to Harmony's Edge," she said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes mixed with thunder. "I trust your journey was comfortable." "Yes, Commander. Thank you for accepting me onto your station." Vexthari's crystalline form shifted slightly. "Your credentials are impressive. Earth's botanical knowledge will be valuable to our research. However, I must discuss something important with you." She pulled up a holographic screen that floated in the air between them. It showed Taemin's medical file with several yellow warning flags next to it. "Your species is new to the Galactic Council," Vexithari explained. "We are still learning about human biology. Our medical database has flagged several concerns about human dietary requirements." Taemin looked at the screen. Next to the list of foods humans could eat, there were warning symbols. Lots of warning symbols. "I don't understand," Taemin said. "Is there a problem with the food here?" "The problem is not with our food," Vexithari said carefully. "The problem is with yours. According to our analysis, 70% of typical human foods would be classified as toxins or biohazards by our safety systems." Taemin laughed, thinking she was joking. When her crystalline form flashed red, he realized she was serious. "Commander, humans have been eating these foods for thousands of years. They're perfectly safe for us." "That is what concerns us," Vexithari replied. "Your species consumes compounds that would harm or kill most other species in the galaxy. We have prepared a special storage area for human food items, and we ask that you notify us before bringing any unusual foods into common areas." Taemin agreed, though he didn't really understand what the fuss was about. How dangerous could his food possibly be? After the commander left, a young woman approached him. She was human, with short black hair and a friendly smile. She wore a lab coat with coffee stains on the sleeve. "You must be the new botanist," she said. "I'm Hyo Jin. Astrophysics department. I've been here for 6 months." "Nice to meet another human," Taemin said, shaking her hand. "The commander seemed worried about what I eat." Hyo Jin's smile grew wider. "Yeah, they're a bit paranoid about human food. My advice? Don't eat anything spicy in the cafeteria for at least a week. Let them get used to you first." "Why? What happens if I eat something spicy?" "Let's just say the biosafety systems are very sensitive and very loud." Taemin should have listened to her warning. He really should have. The first few days on the station went smoothly. Taemin met his new colleagues in the xenobotany department. There was Kixeth, a being who looked like a mass of purple tentacles and communicated through chemical signals that a translator collar converted to speech. There was Dr. Ralesh, the chief medical officer, whose skin glowed with soft bioluminescent patterns. There was Vren, who had a hard shell like a beetle and 6 delicate arms perfect for handling specimens. They all seemed nice, if a bit nervous around him. Taemin noticed they kept a certain distance, as if he might explode without warning. On his third day, Taemin decided he was tired of the bland station food. The cafeteria offered nutritionally complete meals, but they had no taste. Everything was designed to be safe for as many species as possible, which meant it was boring for everyone. He still had some food from Earth in his personal storage. His mother had packed it for him before he left. There was dried fish, instant noodles, some vacuum-sealed rice, and a small container of kimchi. Just looking at the kimchi made him homesick. He could almost smell the spicy, fermented cabbage. Taemin made a decision. He would bring the kimchi to lunch. Just a small amount, mixed with some rice. What harm could it do? The next day, he prepared his lunch carefully in his quarters. He scooped some kimchi into a small container, added rice, and sealed it. The smell was strong, but wonderful to him. It smelled like home, like his mother's kitchen, like Earth. He carried his lunch to the cafeteria during the busy midday period. The large room was filled with scientists from dozens of species, all eating their respective foods and discussing their work. Taemin found an empty table near the window where he could see the stars. He opened his container. The smell of fermented cabbage, garlic, and red pepper immediately spread into the air around him. For a moment, nothing happened. Taemin picked up his chopsticks and reached for a piece of kimchi. Then the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed from every wall. A mechanical voice, usually calm and pleasant, began shouting in panic, "Toxin detected! Contamination protocol Alpha 9! Evacuate immediately!" Klaxons blared so loudly that Taemin dropped his chopsticks. All around him, alien scientists jumped up from their tables. A Valesian scientist who had multiple tentacles got tangled with Vren's hard shell. They both crashed to the floor. Others ran for the exits, their various forms of panic obvious despite their different biologies. Emergency bulkheads began closing, the heavy metal doors grinding down from the ceiling. The air circulation system shut down with a loud clunk. Taemin sat frozen, his chopsticks halfway to his mouth, watching the chaos unfold around him. This was not good. Within 90 seconds, he was surrounded by a hazmat team. 6 individuals in full protective suits, carrying scanners and weapons, formed a circle around his table. Their scanner wands waved frantically over his innocent lunch container. The team leader was Zenthal, a Quarath whose crystalline body was flashing anxious purple through his clear hazmat suit. He spoke through his suit's external speakers, his voice distorted and mechanical. "Sir, step away from the biological weapon immediately." Taemin looked down at his kimchi. He looked back up at the heavily armed hazmat team. He looked at Hyojin, who was still sitting at her table 3 rows away, calmly eating her sandwich and shaking her head. "It's just kimchi," Taemin said weakly. The hazmat team didn't lower their weapons. Zenthal's scanner continued beeping frantically as he waved it over the small container of kimchi. The device was making sounds that Taemin had never heard before, a series of urgent chirps and wails that suggested imminent catastrophe. The other members of the hazmat team maintained their defensive positions, treating the lunch container like it might detonate at any moment. "The capsaicin levels are off the charts," Zenthal announced, his voice shaking through the suit speakers. "The fermentation byproducts register as corrosive compounds. The bacterial cultures—" He paused, his crystalline form flashing even brighter purple. "There are billions of living organisms in this container. Billions!" Taemin tried to keep his voice calm and reasonable. "Yes, that's how fermentation works. The bacteria are part of the process. They're completely harmless to humans." "Harmless?" Another hazmat team member stepped forward. She was a Valesian, her tentacles barely visible through the bulky suit. "Sir, these bacteria produce compounds that would dissolve our internal organs. The pH level alone would burn through most known biological tissues." "But not human tissues," Taemin pointed out. "You were about to put this in your mouth," Zenthal said, as if stating an obvious impossibility. You were going to ingest this. Well, yes. That was the plan. The hazmat team members looked at each other. Even through their suits, Taemin could sense their confusion and horror. One of them began typing rapidly on a datapad, probably updating the human medical files with new warnings. A crowd had gathered at a safe distance. Alien scientists pressed against the emergency bulkheads, watching the scene unfold. Taemin could hear them whispering to each other in various languages, their translator collars creating a buzz of overlapping voices. Is the human injured? Did someone attack him with a bioweapon? Why would he bring something so dangerous to the cafeteria? I heard humans are resistant to most toxins. Resistant? He was about to eat it. Commander Vexathari arrived with the efficiency of someone who had been expecting this exact situation. Her crystalline form moved quickly through the crowd, other scientists stepping aside to let her pass. She took one look at the kimchi container, now sitting inside a level 4 biohazard containment field that hummed with blue energy. She looked at Taemin. She looked at Hyojin, who had finished her sandwich and was now watching the proceedings with obvious amusement. Dr. Hyojin, the commander said, her voice dangerously calm. How long have you been eating items that trigger our toxin alerts? Hyojin stood up from her table and walked over, completely ignoring the hazmat team's gestures for her to stay back. Since my second week on the station, Commander, I filed a report about the false positives. It should be in the human dietary database. The database, Vexathari said slowly, currently flags 70% of human foods as potentially lethal. Yes, ma'am, potentially lethal to other species. Humans have been eating these foods for thousands of years, some of them for tens of thousands of years. The commander's form flickered through several colors that Taemin's translator couldn't identify. They were probably colors that represented emotions humans didn't have words for. Conference room, both of you, right now. The hazmat team carefully transported the kimchi container to a secure storage facility. Taemin watched his lunch being carried away like a dangerous explosive device. He was pretty sure he'd never see it again. The conference room was located in the administrative section of the station. It had a large window looking out at the stars and a table that could adjust its height to accommodate different species. When Taemin and Hyojin arrived, they found themselves facing an entire panel of department heads. Dr. Ralesh sat at the far end of the table, their bioluminescent skin pulsing with agitated yellow patterns. Next to them was Vren from the Xenobotany department, his shell still scratched from his collision during the evacuation. Kixith occupied a special fluid-filled chair, their tentacles waving slowly. Several other beings Taemin didn't recognize filled the remaining seats. Commander Vexathari took her position at the head of the table. We need to discuss human dietary requirements, she announced. Dr. Ralesh, please present your findings. The medical officer activated a holographic display. Images of various human foods appeared in the air above the table, each one marked with hazard symbols and warning labels. Let me be certain I understand the human digestive system correctly, Dr. Ralesh began, their voice tight with controlled panic. Humans intentionally consume capsaicin, which is a compound specifically evolved by plants to cause pain in mammals. You drink alcohol, which is literally a poison that damages cellular structures. You consume caffeine, which is a neurotoxic pesticide. You eat fermented foods containing billions of living bacteria. You consume plants from the nightshade family, which produce compounds toxic to most Earth species. You eat foods that trigger exothermic reactions in your mouths, causing actual tissue damage. You consume rotted milk products. You eat fungal growths. Taemin nodded slowly. That's pretty accurate, yes, though I'd say aged rather than rotted for the cheese. And you do all of this for pleasure? We also do it for nutrition, Taemin explained. But yes, the pleasure is definitely part of it. Humans enjoy eating. It's an important part of our culture. Hyojin raised her hand like a student in class. Dr. Ral Esh, you forgot to mention allium compounds, onions, garlic, leeks. Those are sulfur-based compounds that are toxic to several Earth species, including our domestic animals. You consume toxins that poison your own planet's animals? This came from Vren, whose shell had gone pale with shock. Our planet has a lot of things trying to poison us, Taemin said, trying to make it sound reasonable. We sort of evolved to poison them back, and then we learned to eat them anyway. There was a long silence in the conference room. Taemin could hear the quiet hum of the station's life support systems and the distant sound of someone walking in the corridor outside. Commander Vexithari leaned forward. Explain the capsaicin preference. Your medical files indicate that it directly activates pain receptors. Why would any intelligent species deliberately cause themselves pain? Taemin and Hyojin exchanged a glance. How could they explain something that seemed so natural to them? It's complicated, Hyojin began carefully. We like the way it feels, Taemin offered. You like pain, Vexithari said flatly. Not pain exactly, Taemin tried to explain. It's more like an intense sensation. It releases endorphins which make us feel good, and the burn is temporary. After a while, your mouth adjusts and you can taste all the other flavors in the food more clearly. Your species has built an entire culinary tradition around foods that cause you pain, poison you slowly, or risk microbial contamination, Vexithari summarized. When you put it that way, it sounds weird, Taemin admitted. It is weird. Dr. Ralesh's bioluminescence flared bright pink, lighting up the entire conference room. Do you have any idea what your stomach acid pH level is compared to the galactic average? It's comparable to industrial solvents. You could probably digest most hull materials given enough time. That would explain some things about Earth's wildlife, Taemin muttered, thinking about crocodiles and vultures. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Department heads took turns expressing their concern, fascination, and outright horror at human biology. They discussed everything from human alcohol tolerance to the fact that humans could survive on a diet that would kill most other species within days. By the end, several important decisions had been made. Human food would be stored in its own dedicated area with proper labeling. The cafeteria would have a special section where biosensors were recalibrated to ignore human food signatures. Most importantly, a comprehensive guide would be distributed to all station personnel with the simple warning. If a human says it's food, believe them, but do not touch it unless you want to die. As they were leaving the conference room, Hyojin nudged Taemin. I told you not to bring kimchi to the cafeteria. You could have been more specific about why. Where's the fun in that? 3 weeks passed since the kimchi incident. The story had spread throughout the entire station, becoming the most popular topic in the recreation areas. Some scientists found it funny. Others found it terrifying. Most found it both. Taemin tried to keep a low profile, but it was difficult when half the station treated him like a friendly bomb that might explode at any moment. The other half kept asking him questions about human food, their curiosity outweighing their fear. The xenobotany department had adjusted well to having a human on the team. Kixith enjoyed comparing Earth plants to specimens from other worlds. Vren had stopped jumping every time Taemin opened his lunch container. Even Dr. Ralesh had begun to relax, though they still monitored Taemin's vital signs more closely than anyone else on the station. The real work finally began when Commander Vexithari announced a mission to the newly discovered Theta-7 system. The third planet showed signs of edible vegetation, and the Galactic Council needed to catalog potential food sources. The mission would last 2 weeks, with a small team collecting samples and running preliminary tests. Tae-min was chosen for the team, along with Dr. Ral-esh Kikseth and two security officers named Kren and Moth. Kren was a tall, thin being who could change colors like a chameleon. Moth resembled a large insect with delicate wings and compound eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. They gathered in the shuttle bay early one morning. The shuttle was small but well-equipped, with laboratory space for immediate sample analysis. Tae-min loaded his equipment carefully, double-checking everything on his list. Nervous? Hyo-jin had come to see them off. "A little," Tae-min admitted. "This is my first planetary survey mission." "You'll do great. Just try not to accidentally eat anything that makes the locals panic." "That happened one time. It was 3 weeks ago. I'm never going to live that down, am I?" Hyo-jin grinned. "Not a chance." The journey to Theta 7 took 4 days. Tae-min spent most of that time reviewing the preliminary scans of the planet. It had a breathable atmosphere, though slightly more acidic than Earth's. The temperature was cooler, averaging around 10 degrees Celsius. The vegetation appeared red and purple rather than green, suggesting a different type of photosynthesis. Dr. Ral-esh worked at the neighboring console, their bioluminescent patterns calm and focused. "The atmospheric composition concerns me," they said without looking up. "The acidity level would irritate most respiratory systems." "What about humans?" Tae-min asked. "According to your medical files, you should find it tolerable. Uncomfortable, but tolerable." They paused. "Your species really can survive in the most unlikely environments." "We're adaptable," Tae-min agreed. When they finally landed on Theta 7, Tae-min was eager to step outside. The shuttle's external sensors showed a landscape of twisted vegetation under a purple sky. Strange rock formations dotted the horizon, and a distant mountain range caught the light of the local sun. The team suited up in standard environment suits. The suits would protect them from the acidic air while allowing them to move freely and collect samples. Tae-min noticed that his suit's readings were different from the others. Where their sensors showed yellow and red warning indicators, his showed mostly green. "Your suit's external sensors must be malfunctioning," Kikseth said, their chemical signals translated through their collar. "They're registering that you're experiencing the environment as pleasant." Tae-min checked his readings again. "The suit's working fine. The air does remind me of autumn back home. There's a tangy quality to it, but nothing terrible." "The air is corrosive," Dr. Ral-esh corrected, their voice flat with disbelief. "It would burn my respiratory system in less than 10 minutes. I would die painfully." Tae-min decided not to mention that the air smelled kind of nice, like pine trees mixed with vinegar. He was learning that some things about human biology were better left unsaid. They began their survey near the shuttle, working in a careful grid pattern. The vegetation was unlike anything Tae-min had seen before. The plants had thick, waxy leaves that curled inward to protect themselves from the acidic air. Some grew in spiral patterns, while others spread out in fan shapes close to the ground. Tae-min took samples methodically, running each one through his portable scanner. The first plant produced a compound similar to oxalic acid, the same chemical found in rhubarb leaves. He marked it as potentially toxic and moved on. The second plant had thorns that secreted a clear fluid. His scanner analyzed the fluid and beeped a warning. "Interesting," Tae-min muttered. "This one produces a compound similar to ricin." "Mark it as extremely toxic," Kikseth instructed from several meters away. "Obviously," Tae-min agreed. He paused, studying the molecular structure on his scanner. "Though with proper processing, you could probably denature the proteins and make it safe. We do something similar with cassava on Earth." "You eat something similar to ricin?" Dr. Ral-esh had stopped their own work to stare at Tae-min. "Cassava has cyanide, not ricin. But the principle is the same. You just have to prepare it correctly. Soak it, dry it, cook it. Removes most of the toxins." Most of the toxins, Ralesh repeated. Well, you can't remove all of them, but you can reduce them to safe levels. The doctor and the botanist exchanged what Tai Min had learned to recognize as the universal gesture for humans are completely insane. They worked for 6 hours, cataloging 17 different plant species. Most were toxic to some degree. A few showed potential as food sources after extensive processing. None were immediately edible for the majority of galactic species. Then they found the orange fruits. They grew in a field about 2 kilometers from the shuttle, clustered together in groups of 5 or 6. Each fruit was roughly the size of Tai Min's fist, with a bumpy orange skin that looked tough and waxy. The plants themselves were low to the ground, with thick stems and broad leaves. Kren spotted them first. Unusual growth pattern, the security officer observed, their skin shifting to a curious shade of green. Should we investigate? The team approached carefully. Tai Min's scanner began beeping before they even reached the plants. The readings were extraordinary. Every toxicity scale maxed out. Whatever these fruits produced, it was potent. Well, Kixeth said cheerfully, at least this one is obviously inedible. We can mark it as a natural hazard and move on. But Tai Min was already kneeling next to the nearest plant, his scanner working overtime. The compound structure is fascinating, he said, more to himself than the others. It's producing something that looks like a super-concentrated capsaicinoid, much more powerful than anything we have on Earth. So it would cause excruciating pain, Dr. Ralesh confirmed. Almost certainly. Tai Min carefully cut a small sample and placed it in a sealed container. We should bring some back for study. For study, Ralesh emphasized. Not for consumption. Obviously, Tai Min agreed. But his tone made everyone nervous. They returned to the shuttle as the local sun began to set. The sky turned from purple to deep violet, and strange sounds echoed across the landscape. Moth assured them the sounds were probably just wind moving through rock formations, though nobody seemed entirely convinced. Back on the shuttle, Tai Min spent the evening analyzing the orange fruit samples. The compound they produced was genuinely unique. It shared some molecular similarities with capsaicin, the chemical that made chili peppers spicy. But there were significant differences in the structure, particularly in how the molecule would bind to pain receptors. He ran simulation after simulation, building models of how the compound might interact with different types of biological tissue. The results were consistent. For most known species, the compound would cause immediate and overwhelming pain. Even brief exposure would be unbearable. But for humans, with their unusual tolerance for capsaicin, the results were less clear. Tai Min knew he should wait. He should follow proper protocols, file reports, let the research committee review his findings. He should definitely not do what he was thinking about doing. He looked at the sealed sample container. The orange fruit pieces sat inside, looking innocent and harmless. Just a small test, he whispered to himself, under controlled conditions. For science. Dr. Ralesh found him still awake at 3 in the morning, running more simulations. The medical officer's bioluminescent patterns showed concern and curiosity in equal measure. You're going to test it on yourself, aren't you? Ralesh asked. Tai Min looked up, startled. What makes you think that? I've been studying human behavior for 6 months, ever since Hyojin arrived. You have a particular expression when you're planning to do something that will give me a cardiac episode. I'm not planning anything dangerous, Tai Min protested. You're planning to expose yourself to a Class 7 biotoxin, under strictly controlled conditions. Ralesh's patterns flickered through several colors. Show me your research. For the next hour, Tai Min explained his theory. The compound from the orange fruit might bind to pain receptors differently than normal capsaicin. If his models were correct, It could lead to new types of pain medication that would work across multiple species. The only way to know for sure, Taemin concluded, is to test it on yourself. I'm the only human available. Dr. Ralesh was quiet for a long moment. If we do this, we do it properly. Full medical monitoring, emergency protocols ready, and I document everything. Someone needs to keep you from accidentally killing yourself in the name of science. They waited until the shuttle returned to Harmony's Edge. Dr. Ralesh insisted that any testing be done in a proper medical facility with full emergency equipment. Taemin agreed, though he was impatient to begin. The journey back to the station took another 4 days. Taemin spent most of that time refining his models and writing detailed research proposals. He knew Commander Vexathari would need to approve the experiment, and she would ask difficult questions. Kixeth noticed something was happening. "You've been unusually focused," they observed one evening. "More than usual, I mean." "What are you planning?" "Just some follow-up research on the samples we collected. The orange fruits, among other things." Kixeth's tentacles waved in a pattern that suggested amusement. "You humans are so predictable. You find something toxic and immediately want to know what it tastes like." "That's not what this is about," Taemin protested. "It's serious research into potential pharmaceutical applications." "But you are going to taste it." "A very small amount, under medical supervision." "Predictable," Kixeth repeated, but their tone was fond rather than critical. When they docked at Harmony's Edge, Taemin went straight to Commander Vexthari's office. He carried a data pad loaded with his research proposals, medical protocols, and theoretical models. He had rehearsed his presentation 3 times. The commander listened to his entire pitch without interrupting. Her crystalline form remained a neutral blue throughout, giving no indication of her thoughts. When he finished, she was silent for almost a minute. "You want to ingest a Class 7 biotoxin," she finally said. "A heavily diluted sample of a Class 7 biotoxin," Taemin corrected. "Starting with 1 part compound to 10,000 parts inert solution. Because you believe it might lead to new pain medications." "Yes, Commander. The molecular structure suggests unique binding properties. If I'm correct, we could develop treatments that work for species currently unable to use standard pain relief." Vexathari pulled up his proposal on her own screen. She scrolled through it slowly, reading every section. "Your safety protocols are thorough. Dr. Ralesh has approved the medical monitoring. You've even included psychological evaluation to ensure you're not acting on impulse." "I've tried to think of everything." "You've thought of everything except the possibility that you're wrong and this kills you." "The dilution levels make that extremely unlikely, Commander. And my medical data shows humans have remarkable resistance to capsaicinoid compounds." "Remarkable resistance is not immunity." "No, but it's enough for carefully controlled testing." Vexathari's form flickered through several colors. Taemin had spent enough time on the station now to recognize this as her thinking process. Blue meant calm consideration. Purple meant concern. Yellow meant curiosity. She was cycling through all 3. "If I approve this," she said slowly, "and you discover something valuable, it would benefit many species across the galaxy. That's my hope. If I approve this and something goes wrong, I will have authorized a researcher to poison himself. The risk is minimal. Minimal is not 0. They stared at each other across the desk. Taemin knew this was the critical moment. He had one chance to convince her. "Commander, humans have been testing substances on themselves for thousands of years. It's how we learned which plants were safe to eat, which ones had medicinal properties, and which ones would kill us. We call it empirical research. Sometimes the only way to know for certain is to try. Your species' approach to science is terrifying, but effective." Vexathari was quiet again. Then her form shifted to a pale green that Taemin had never seen before. Later, He would learn it meant resigned acceptance. "Approved," she said. "But Dr. Ralesh supervises every test. If anything goes wrong, you stop immediately. And I want daily reports." "Thank you, Commander." "Don't thank me yet. If you die, I'm putting it in your permanent record." The first test took place the following morning in the medical bay. Dr. Ralesh had prepared a private room with every piece of emergency equipment they owned. Monitors lined the walls, ready to track Taemin's vital signs, brain activity, hormone levels, and a dozen other biological markers. Hyojin arrived just as they were setting up. "I heard you're going to poison yourself for science." "I'm conducting carefully controlled research," Taemin said for what felt like the 100th time. "Same thing." She grabbed a chair. "I'm staying to watch. If you die, someone needs to take notes." "Your concern is touching." "I'm very concerned. Mostly about whether your stupidity is contagious." Dr. Ralesh ignored their banter and focused on the medical equipment. "All monitors are active," they announced. "Baseline readings established. Emergency treatments are prepared. We can begin when you're ready." Taemin sat on the examination table. He felt strangely calm. This was just another experiment, just another step in understanding the universe. The fact that he was the test subject didn't change the fundamental process. Ralesh handed him a small vial containing exactly 1 drop of the diluted compound. It looked like clear water. "Remember," Ralesh said, "place it on your tongue and wait. Do not swallow. We need to observe the initial reaction." Taemin nodded. He opened the vial, tilted his head back, and let a single drop fall onto his tongue. For approximately 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then his entire mouth caught fire. "Oh," he managed to say. His eyes started watering immediately. "Oh, wow." "Vital signs spiking," the medical AI reported calmly. "Heart rate elevated, blood pressure rising, endorphin levels increasing rapidly." "Pain level?" Dr. Ralesh asked urgently. 7 out of 10, Taemin gasped. "Maybe 8. It's like if lightning had a flavor and that lightning was very angry." "We're stopping the test," Ralesh announced, reaching for the neutralizing solution. "No, wait." Taemin held up a hand. "The pain is already fading. Look at the neural scans." On the monitors, colored images showed the compound binding to Taemin's pain receptors and then releasing almost immediately. The binding was strong but brief, creating an intense but short-lived sensation. "Fascinating," Ralesh breathed, their bioluminescence pulsing with scientific excitement. "The molecular structure causes rapid activation followed by rapid deactivation. It's completely different from standard capsaicin." Taemin's mouth still burned, but he could feel the sensation decreasing. Within 2 minutes, it had faded to a mild tingle. Within 5 minutes, it was gone completely. "That's exactly what my models predicted," he said, his voice still a bit rough. "Quick binding, quick release. With the right modifications, this could be used for targeted pain relief. Apply it where you need it, get immediate effect, and it wears off quickly without lingering side effects." Hyojin had moved closer to the monitors. "Your endorphin levels are still elevated. How do you feel?" "Like I just ran a marathon, tired but good. My mouth doesn't hurt anymore." They ran 16 more tests over the next week. Each test used slightly different dilutions and application methods. Taemin tried the compound on different parts of his tongue, on his skin, even in his eyes under extremely controlled conditions. That last test was Dr. Ralesh's idea, testing whether the compound could work as an eye drop for certain medical conditions. Every test produced the same result: intense but brief activation of pain receptors, followed by rapid deactivation. The effect was consistent and predictable. By the end of the week, Taemin had isolated the specific molecular structure responsible for the unique binding properties. He had theoretical models for how to modify the compound to work with different species biochemistries. He had enough data to write a preliminary research paper. Commander Vexithari reviewed his findings with an expression that transcended species boundaries. She looked like someone who desperately wanted to be angry, but couldn't quite manage it because the results were too impressive. "You poisoned yourself 17 times, she stated. "I performed 17 controlled experiments," Taemin corrected gently. 17 times. "Replication is important for scientific validity, Commander." She looked at Hyojin, who had attended every single test. "Were you aware of all this?" "I took very detailed notes," Hyojin said cheerfully, handing over a data pad. "Complete documentation of every test, including some observations about human pain tolerance that I thought might be interesting." Vexithari accepted the data pad like it might explode. She scanned through it quickly, her form shifting through colors too fast to identify. "Your preliminary research has been submitted to the Galactic Medical Council," she finally said. "They've responded." "And?" Taemin held his breath. "They're disturbed, fascinated, and requesting more samples. They want to begin trials immediately. Apparently, several council members fainted while reading your methodology section." "Really?" "The part where you describe putting a Class 7 biotoxin in your eyes caused 3 medical emergencies at the council headquarters. In my defense, that test produced very valuable data about ocular applications." "That did not make them feel better," Vexithari said. "They've also requested that all future human research include warning labels in the methodology section. Something along the lines of standard human research practices may cause distress in non-human readers." Hyojin laughed. "We're going to need that warning on a lot of things." "Probably," the commander agreed. "Dr. Taemin, your work is groundbreaking. The potential applications are enormous. The council is already talking about fast-tracking approval for clinical trials." "That's wonderful news." "It is. I'm officially commending you for your innovative research." She paused. "I'm also officially noting in your file that you're never allowed to do anything like this again without explicit written permission from both me and Dr. Ralesh." "Understood, Commander." As they left the office, Hyojin nudged Taemin. "You know you're famous now, right? The human who ate poison and discovered medicine." "That's not exactly how I'd describe it." "That's how everyone else will describe it." She was right. 6 months passed in what felt like weeks. Harmony's Edge had settled into a new normal that included regular human presence. The cafeteria now had a dedicated section for human food, complete with adjusted biosensors that didn't scream every time someone opened a container of kimchi. The station's medical database had been updated with extensive notes on human biology, most of them flagged with warnings that made other species uncomfortable. Taemin's research had progressed beyond his initial expectations. The compound from Theta 7, now officially designated as capsaicinoid T7, was in clinical trials across 15 different species. Early results showed promise for treating chronic pain conditions that had previously been untreatable. The Galactic Medical Council had sent 3 separate delegations to study his work. The station itself had changed in subtle ways. More researchers were willing to work with the human scientists. Some had even started asking questions about Earth, about human culture, about the strange foods that had caused so much panic. A few brave souls had tried modified versions of human cuisine, though always with Dr. Ralesh standing by with emergency medical equipment. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the emergency message arrived. Taemin was in the xenobotany lab examining samples from a new planet survey when Commander Vexithari's voice came through the station-wide communication system. "All senior researchers report to the main conference room immediately. Priority Alpha situation." Taemin exchanged glances with Kixeth, who was working at the next station. Priority Alpha meant a genuine emergency, something that threatened lives or the station itself. The conference room was crowded when they arrived. Scientists from every department pressed together, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Commander Vexithari stood at the front, her crystalline form flashing urgent red. "We've received a distress call from Proxima Station," she announced without preamble. "They're experiencing an agricultural crisis. A fungal infection has spread through their food production domes. It's destroying crops faster than they can contain it." A holographic image appeared above the table, showing the Proxima Station facility. It was a small colony on the edge of explored space, home to about 4,000 individuals, mostly Velesian colonists. "The fungus is producing a compound toxic to Velesian biochemistry," Vexathari continued. "They've tried every antifungal treatment in the Galactic database. Nothing works. The infection is spreading exponentially. At current rates, they'll lose all food production within 3 weeks. Dr. Raul leaned forward. "Have they attempted chemical sterilization?" "Yes. The fungus has adapted to resist standard treatments. It's also producing spores at an alarming rate. They're worried about it spreading beyond the agricultural domes." "What about evacuating the station?" someone asked. "They're preparing for that possibility, but it would mean abandoning years of research and a significant financial investment. More importantly, if this fungus spreads to other colonies, it could become a galactic-level threat." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the gravity of the situation. Tai Min raised his hand. "Commander, may I see the molecular analysis of the fungal toxin?" Vexathari looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Of course, Dr. Tai Min." The data appeared on a screen in front of him. He studied it carefully, his mind racing through possibilities. The compound the fungus produced was complex, with multiple toxic elements that worked together to poison Velesian tissues. But to his human eyes, trained in Earth's agricultural chemistry, it looked familiar. "I might have something," he said slowly. The entire room turned to look at him. "The compound structure is similar to certain plant pathogens on Earth. The toxin it produces is dangerous to Velesians, but it's nutritionally neutral to most other species." He pulled up his own files. "Earth agriculture has dealt with aggressive fungal infections for thousands of years. We've developed several treatment methods." "We've already tried antifungals," Dr. Raul pointed out. "Not Earth antifungals," Taman said. "We use a different approach. Copper-based compounds combined with quaternary ammonium solutions modified with natural extracts." "Copper is a heavy metal," Kixith said carefully. "And quaternary ammonium compounds are caustic. In high concentrations, yes. But in controlled applications, they're highly effective against fungal infections. We've been using variations of this treatment for 3,000 years. Commander Vexathari's form shifted to thoughtful purple. "You believe this would work on an alien fungus?" "The molecular structure suggests it would. The fungus is using similar biological mechanisms to Earth fungi. The treatment would need to be modified for local conditions, but the basic principle should apply." "How certain are you?" Tamin hesitated. He didn't want to overstate his confidence, but he also knew that lives depended on finding a solution. 70% certain, maybe 80. The chemistry is sound, but I'd need to run tests to be sure." "We don't have time for extensive testing," Vexathari said. "Proxima Station needs a solution now. I can run preliminary tests in a few hours. If they work, I can provide detailed treatment protocols immediately." The commander looked around the room, gauging reactions. Most of the scientists looked uncertain. Some looked hopeful. Dr. Raul looked resigned. "Do it," Vexathari decided. "Dr. Raul, Dr. Kixith, assist Dr. Taman with whatever he needs. I want preliminary results in 4 hours." The next 4 hours were intense. Taman set up a makeshift greenhouse in one of the station's empty cargo bays. He used samples of the fungus that Proxima Station had transmitted, growing them in conditions that mimicked the agricultural domes. The fungus spread quickly, just as the reports had indicated. Within 2 hours, it had covered half the test environment. Taemin prepared his treatment solution carefully, mixing copper sulfate with quaternary ammonium compounds and adding extracts from garlic and ginseng that had natural antifungal properties. "This is insane," Dr. Ralesh muttered, watching him work. "You're combining heavy metals with organic compounds and hoping it doesn't kill everyone." "Not hoping," Taemin corrected. "Calculating. The concentrations are precise. The mixture will target the fungus without harming the Velesians or damaging their crops." "How can you possibly know that?" "Because Earth farmers have been using similar treatments for thousands of years. We just never thought of it as special because it's basic agricultural chemistry to us." He applied the treatment to the infected test environment using a fine spray. The effect was almost immediate. The fungus began to die, its dark patches turning white and then crumbling away. Within an hour, the entire test area was clear. "It worked," Chikseth said, their tentacles waving with excitement. "It actually worked." Taemin ran more tests, trying different concentrations and application methods. Every test produced the same result. The fungus died quickly and completely, leaving the underlying plant materials unharmed. He prepared a detailed protocol and sent it to Commander Vexithari. She forwarded it to Proxima Station immediately. The response came back within hours. The colonists had begun treatment. The initial results were promising. 3 days later, Proxima Station sent a formal message. The fungal infection was gone. All agricultural domes were clear. Crop production was resuming. 4,000 lives had been saved, along with years of research and the colony's entire food supply. The Velesian colonial governor sent a personal message of thanks. "Dr. Taemin's quick thinking and innovative solutions saved our colony. We are forever grateful for human knowledge and their remarkable ability to solve problems we thought were impossible." Commander Vexithari called Taemin to her office. She looked tired but pleased. "The Galactic Council is holding a commendation ceremony," she said. "They want to recognize your contribution officially." "I just applied basic agricultural knowledge," Taemin said, uncomfortable with the attention. "Basic knowledge that involved compounds flagged as hazardous by 17 different safety protocols," Vexithari pointed out. "Do you understand what you did? You saved an entire colony using methods that most species would consider dangerous or impossible. Earth has a lot of experience with difficult problems. We've had to develop creative solutions. Creative solutions involving heavy metals and caustic compounds." "When you put it that way, it sounds dangerous." "It is dangerous," Vexithari said. "That's what makes it remarkable. You saw a problem that stumped our best scientists and solved it using knowledge that's common on your planet but revolutionary here." The ceremony was held in the station's main hall 2 weeks later. Scientists from across the station attended, along with several delegations from other facilities. The Velesian governor came in person, along with representatives from Proxima Station's research teams. Taemin stood at the front of the hall, feeling awkward in formal clothing. Hyojin stood next to him, having been included in the recognition for her support and documentation of human research methods. Commander Vexithari presented them with crystalline awards that captured and reflected light in beautiful patterns. Dr. Taemin and Dr. Hyojin, on behalf of the Galactic Council and the 4,000 residents of Proxima Station, we thank you for your innovative thinking and your willingness to share human knowledge with the galaxy. The hall erupted in various forms of applause. Some species clapped their hands or appendages, others made sounds or changed colors. The Velesians released a pleasant-smelling pheromone that their translators converted to words of gratitude. Hyojin leaned over and whispered, "This is nice, but you know what's going to happen next, right?" "What?" "Someone's going to trigger the biosafety alarm with their lunch." As if on cue, the familiar klaxons began blaring from the cafeteria level. The automated voice, now modified to be slightly less panicked, announced, "Human food signature detected. This is not an emergency. Repeat, this is not an emergency." The assembled scientists laughed, the sound mixing into a strange but pleasant harmony. Commander Vexithari sighed, her crystalline form flashing through amused colors. "I'll have security check on that. In the meantime, please join us for refreshments. We have selections suitable for all species, including a separate area for human cuisine that comes with appropriate warnings." As the crowd dispersed toward the reception area, Taemin found himself surrounded by curious scientists asking questions about Earth, about human food, about agricultural methods. He answered as best he could, still amazed that his ordinary knowledge had become so valuable. Dr. Raliesh approached with two other medical officers. "Dr. Taemin, we've been discussing your methods. We'd like to collaborate on a comprehensive study of Earth agricultural and medical practices. There may be other solutions hiding in what you consider basic knowledge." "I'd be happy to help," Taemin said. "Excellent. Just one request." "What's that?" "Please warn us before you test anything else on yourself." Taemin laughed. "I'll do my best."